Next up is Buck Meloy. He's a retired fisherman, fished for 40 years. And he said, don't spend a lot of time talking about me. He said, I'll just make it up as I go. Here's Buck.
Oh, good, I can see. I've got a couple of stories to tell, but first I'll read you a short poem in keeping with the spirit of Fisher Poets, even though it's not very good. So here's the Fisher Poet's dog. The dog's love lies dutifully at my feet. I run fingers over Apple keyboard, eons away from his thoughts and dreams of nighttime raccoons and post sniffings. I rise. He leaps up in attentive anticipation and dogs my steps, disappointment dully growing in eyes and limbs as I enter the bathroom. Okay, what's in a name? So you finally bought your new dream boat of a boat, the do-it-all vessel of your wildest wishes. No more having to pretend she's better than she is. No more fear for your life when you have fish aboard and the wind is blowing southeast 35. No more raindrops on your head in the pilot chair. No more plastic sheets to prevent hypothermia in your soggy bunk. She's new, she's wonderful, and now she's yours. So what will you name her? If you're like the first 19 gill netters, I ask just that. You don't have a clue. Out of 19 boat operators, I got 19, I don't know. I hit a live one on number 20. Thinking back to when he had trolled the ocean, he said, without a moment's hesitation, swell rider. Though I didn't take him up on the name, I thought his suggestion was, well, swell. Through the years, I've remained curious how boat owners arrive at the names they finally emblazon on their new bows and transoms. After all, a boat's name, its second most obvious feature after its silhouette, must say a great deal about the namer. If you are a traditionalist, you'll name your boat after something feminine, like your wife or girlfriend, mother, daughter, or dog. There are plenty of fishermen who have done just that. The gillnet fleet in Cordova, Alaska, from where I have done most of my fishing, would appear to have a history of honoring loved ones. Carol Marie, Carol M., Miss Dana, Carly Ray, Annette Louise, Nicole, Sheila Sue, Sydney Jean, Sherry Lynn, list goes on, including my boat, the Elaine, named after its builder by his wife. At Aileen's top speed of 7 knots, I get to see plenty of passing transoms and have lots of time to ponder their names as I poke my way to and from the fishing grounds. Local boat names fall into a variety of categories, most of them traditional, less traditional, than feminine loved ones. In the interest of philosophy and taxonomy, we can explore some of them. First, why are so many gill netters not named after loved ones? Could it have to do with the transitory nature of human relationships? Is the skipper of the Lorient embarrassed every time he steps aboard with his new true love, Suzanne? The Lee part of Kathy Lee honors daughter Lee, who will always deserve the name's permanent place, but the determined defacing of the Kathy part from its 3 locations on the hull suggests that the skipper, divorce finally final, is ready to leap through the necessary Coast Guard hoops to completely eliminate his ex's memory from the hull. At least 2 Cordova gill netters neatly avoided the potential of such pitfalls by choosing generic names, Little Miss, Gutsy Girl. The most traditional alternative to a sweetheart name has been the naming of a place or a significant personality, you know, like Togiak or Darth Vader. Others celebrate the principle or the primal struggle between man and nature. For example, Ocean Slaughter. One prominent niche for names in Cordova is occupied by the Russian fishermen in the fleet, but what non-Russian can figure out their naming philosophy. Perhaps it is place or person names: Biroza, Rosa, Svet, Basargan, Kazbek, Taramak, Andreev, Salavi, Strela. It is almost possible that there is old believer humor here that's lost on me. At least one speedy Russian bow picker supports the humor theory with his new boat, the Rush On. And which of these Russians demonstrated the better sense of humor? The one who named his boat Reef Touch, or the nefarious one who later obliterated the T, remaking the name to Reef Ouch? Some names may simply reflect a spelling level rivaling Dan Quayle's, like the misspelled Arctic, A-R-T-I-C, and Whiskey Shackle, W-I-S-K-Y-S-H-A-K-L-E. Then there are the compound names, too arcane for me to fathom: Elaine, Dotoni, Rebater, Cimmeril, Robisol, Sanita, and what the heck is a Christhemos? We have no trouble understanding Captain Bob McMaster's naming his bow picker the Salmon Master, and certainly Sockeye, Sockeye High, Kita, Orko, Nurka, and Tailwalker run in a similar vein. There is a growing tendency to project humor with a gill netter's name, perhaps because of the lack of lighthearted opportunity in the general fishing business these days. Some attempts have been more successful than others. It is not hard to smile seeing Comic Relief bouncing off sandbars, or hearing Fish and Game calling Fish and Wildlife to announce the closing for the year of the salmon season on May 17th, only 2 days after it had started. We have Maiden Foam, Lucky Lager, Rytack, Little Pucker, also Wet Dream, Easy Lay, Big 10-inch, Gnarly Macho, Not Pretty, Never Ready, which was later renamed Ever Ready by a new owner, and Dances with Clams, a personal favorite. Our local one local fisherwoman purchased the Dizzy Bitch. She promptly and economically exchanged 2 letters to rename it the Busy Ditch. And what about all those Rose boats? We understand why Ron Rose would name his boat Rosie. I suppose that Rosie, too, could also be in the family. But Lauren Rose, Carmen Rose, Tara Rose, Donnie Rose, are we back to sweethearts, or are these boats owned by the fleet horticulturists? I always smile when the Luna Sea eases by me, but my favorite in Cordova's harbor is Today. What, after all, is the business of gill netting about? The act of fishing is itself very much an intense existential act of the present. It really happens only today. And I like to be reminded of that as I bob around on the water thinking about tomorrow. Thank you. Title of this one is Nature's Nautical Curse. My first encounter with the world of jellyfish occurred many years ago, before I had entered the world of fishing and its exotic peculiarities. I had plunged into a deep bay in Zihuatanejo, seeking pleasure and relief from the hot air of southern Mexico. It was heaven at first, but then my naked skin began to sting. I had no idea what was happening, and swatting didn't help. As the pain increased, I swam rapidly to shore, where it no longer worsened. Then, thanks to the kids chuckling on the beach, I learned that the stinging would fade away by itself, and that it was due to aqua mala, called medusa by the adults. Only 2 years later, I was learning to fish in Alaska, where swimming was seldom an option, even in the summer. The air on the ocean was usually somewhere between cool and just plain cold, and the water was flat out chilly. Frequent rain provided as much water on the deck as I could possibly ever need. The first job I landed was on a salmon trawler out of Ketchikan. Though old, the boat was intelligently constructed and maintained and well prepared for making long trips anywhere in southeast Alaska. The skipper was an old logger who had worked the forest of Washington State in the early 1900s, until the forests of Alaska became more fertile grounds. When that also began to slow, he learned to fish and became quite good at it. He was a rough, tough, hard, self-made man who took no crap from anybody and had a hard time keeping a crewman, but that's another story. Low pay and merciless pressure drove me off of his boat after a month. So upon returning to Ketchikan, I grabbed my final paycheck and left trolling behind. 2 days later, a little sooner than I would have liked, I found myself hopping onto a purse seiner. That might seem like an equally dumb thing for me to be doing, but the summery days had begun to shorten. The work had periodic let-ups, and there was a crew of 3 to 4 other guys to share the misery with me. Besides, the misery really wasn't all that bad. The 2 worst things on the same boat were the skipper being an idiot and the jellyfish. We could pretty much get the work done despite the skipper, except when he drank. But the jellyfish was something else. For every ton of salmon we caught and dragged on deck, we seemed to land nearly as much jellyfish. They dropped on our heads from above when the net came over the power block. They smeared themselves all over our gloved hands as we handled the seine. They were splashed in our faces by the freshly flopping fish. They were sometimes shin deep on the deck, and everywhere they touched us that wasn't thoroughly covered stung like mad. It was also important to carefully clean one's hands before taking a leak. And woe to he who catches a speck of jelly in his eye. I had the job of pulling and stacking the seine nets, cork line, and attached web, where most of what I did was at shoulder level or lower, so I usually got smacked less by jelly than the other deck guys. We didn't call it jellyfish because by the time it reached us, it was more like the consistency of pus, stinging pus. And it often morphed into minuscule pieces that were invisible to the eye, but still incredibly painful to exposed human surfaces. So for protection, we carefully covered up, even on a rare hot day, in nearly bulletproof rain gear. Also a long raincoat, paper towels stuffed up each sleeve, rag tied around neck, heavy rubber gloves, rain hat worn backwards with the long part of the brim protruding out from beneath the raincoat hood, ear flaps over forehead, hip boots, waterproof pants, and lots of clothing. Fortunately, the day seldom exceeded 60 degrees, so this costume was usually not unbearably hot. Sid, who piled the even heavier leaded bottom seine lines right next to me on deck, wore all of this, plus a handkerchief tied over his head, chaps over his boots, a dish towel worn as a mask, plastic cuffs over his raincoat sleeves, large dark glasses, and occasionally a fireman's helmet and/or mask under his raincoat hood. The helmet was saved for excessive incursions of jelly, especially under high winds. We didn't have a shower on board, which may have been a blessing on this boat, and it did prevent fights over who might get to use it, given the lack of hot water, or sometimes any water at all. But as bad as the jelly could be, we slowly got kind of used to it. Yes, it was horrible, but we shared it without alternative, accepted it as we did our paychecks, understood that it was an unavoidable part of our lives and livelihoods, and dreamt, hopefully, that we might never experience it again. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kerry Jones, and been reading for like, what, 15 years or something? I can't remember.
Wow, gosh, almost the whole length of the Fisher
It's been
Poet.
20, I think it's been 22 years or whatever it is, but
Well,
so
what do you think? Is it getting better or bigger? It is getting bigger, right?
getting bigger, you know, there's debate, talk about, well, is it getting better? I don't know. You know, there's less fishermen reading, but there's still lots of us, so it's great. It's still great, yeah.
Right. So do you write poetry?
What comes, I don't know how much I write, but my own, I don't do a lot. In fact, my set last night was stuff I'd done before, except for one piece. So,
Well, do you look forward to seeing like people that come every year make a trek over here?
yeah, no, we all of us really look forward to being back with this family that we've built over these years, and it's like a season fishing where you're working with the same people, and you know it's seasonal, so it's kind of like a great fish opening in a way. But it becomes family, and with everybody that we've been reading with for these years.
Where are you performing tonight?
At the Kala, 5 o'clock.
Oh, okay. The Kala.
Yeah.
I'll look for that.
Okay.
Why do you have a bucket?
This is a gut bucket or a wash tub base. So I'm going to jam with these guys. Are going to be playing music here soon.
Oh,
Usually every Saturday on the Saturday afternoon here at the Gear Shack.
So could you end with a little bit of the song?
Okay, this is just the chorus from my song. I fish with same people for a long time. It becomes family, right? And so it's more family than crew. They were my brothers, they were my sisters, more family than crew. They've moved on now, that era's gone now, I'm left alone on the deck with the blues. It's not just fishing that brought me there, or the checks that were more than fair. They're my forever fellow crew. We knew each other's thoughts and hardly had to talk. People in my life, that's the glue. There were lots of giant hauls. The fish were wall to wall. Had our share of small ones too. You did your job so well, even when the seas were hell. I always knew I could count on you. cat mended with quick hands, and Diane's biscuits were so grand. And I'll sure miss her laughter too. Nate, the gear was always great, thanks to the deck boss being Nate. And his singing really cleared out the blues. They were my brothers, they were my sisters, more family than crew. They've moved on now, that era's gone now, I'm left alone on the deck with the blues. Antarctica calls Diane there, though we are still finding her hair. Cat's cooking on dry land for a different crew. Josh was a deck ninja with no fuss, but a move he had to bust. He's now a captain with his own crew. Nate, hold your newborn son in your arms, away from all this harm. That's the place that you should be, to be moved by his love that comes from above, not from the fury of the sea. They were my brothers, they were my sisters, more family than crew. They've moved on now, that era's gone now, I'm left alone on the deck with the blues. There'll be new crewmen there, and they'll haul the gear pretty fair, but they'll never be as good as all of you. What we had was rare, you were deck mates extraordinaire. It won't be the same without you. They were my brothers, they were my sisters, more family than crew. They moved on now, that era is gone now, I'm left alone on the deck with the blues. That era's gone now, that they've moved on now, I'm left alone on the deck with the blues.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful.